Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining for the Ethereal Blocks hackathon presentation. We'll be starting here in a moment with the Ethereal Blocks and a brief presentation on growing open source software. So just to introduce myself before the talk begins, my name is Vivek Singh. I work across a couple of projects. I'm the co-founder of a project called Gitcoin, which was the host of the Ethereal Blocks hackathon and is generally focused on growing open source software. What you'll see on this Issue Explorer is a variety of projects that are open source that are looking for developers around the world to work on projects with them. And what we've seen is a variety of Web3 projects. On the screen, we have Bancor, Good Dollar, Gitcoin, an Ethereum project itself, all using Gitcoin to engage with developers around the world and build projects together. Some other experience I had was working on the Ethereum Foundation grants team for about 4 or 5 months, just working to understand the different initiatives and strategies that the EF team has in growing their open source community, Ethereum being a community that we are all a part of, while also growing some smaller communities along the way. So another interesting lens that I feel grateful to have had. This talk is going to be a combination of things. Ultimately, it's a talk about Web3, the future of the internet that we're building together, that I think is going to be built on open networks. But really, it's about you, it's about me, and it's about us, and the way that we can cooperate and interact together in a new, interesting way that wasn't really possible before Web3 existed. And to illustrate this, it's interesting to think back to about 1990, where Eric Raymond, who was an open source software proponent, was talking about 2 different methods to build software. At the time, it was quite unclear which of the 2 would make more sense. There was the cathedral and the bazaar. And the cathedral was the only approach that really had been taken to that time, which was build in a private, behind closed doors, build together, release every 18 months, and tell your community when the next version of the software is available. Along the way, if there were feature requests or bugs, they would make it their way into the next release, but they weren't things that the community could contribute towards. And Eric at the time thought that there could be a more interesting approach, which he termed the bazaar, which is a little bit more interesting, a little bit more variety of ideas would come across, and ultimately it's messier, but at the same time, there's a lot of beauty in what a bazaar can be. It's a place where people come together for ideas, they trade, it's a marketplace, and things grow as a result. So this, I think, is kind of the spiritual successor of that movement, Web3. And so what we're seeing today, and this started before Web3 really kicked off, but I think is just going to continue to grow and grow and grow, is this idea that prior to Web3, you were working at a traditional company, you had one corporation and a bunch of employees that worked for that corporation towards those ends. But in Web3, as an individual, you can choose different projects to contribute towards. You can be a part of a broader community. And what you'll see on the right is actual data from months ago now on Gitcoin, where you see developers working on the Ethereum Foundation, working on MetaMask, working on Gitcoin, and really just working across projects. And all of these things contribute to a broader mission, but at the same time are looking at the world in a different way, if you think about what this is going to. And so freelancers have been kind of a big trend, but this is only going to rise as open source software and projects are able to work together more in the future. And this brings us to Web3. In the more broad sense. Now we know, it's interesting, there's open source software, and as a result, many people can build upon it, but it still begs the question, like, why? Why spend the time working on Web3? Why work together towards this end? What's the use of our time going here as opposed to going towards working on a company? What's the reason? And I'll go through a variety of reasons. Censorship resistance is one that's talked about a lot. The ability to run unstoppable applications. a global financial system that includes everyone around the world. This is something that also I'm sure you guys have heard different times during this talk and the talks during the day. The third one, align users and platforms, is another one that I think is interesting, which is the idea that builders that are building on top of Ethereum in a new way are able to interact with each other and the users of their platform in a way that does not feel extractive and actually can bring these users back to that company to do more interesting things along the way, to get incentivized and rewarded for the work that they do. Composability. This is something interesting that will come up during the hackathon portion. You have the ability in Ethereum to build using multiple building blocks. You could build a project using Portis and using Dharma and using Bloom all at the same time in a way that is additive to all three of those companies as opposed to extractive. Self-sovereign identity, digital art, you have the read-write, trust verifiable web is something that people have talked about, which is the idea that Web 2 was a web that everyone could read to, everyone could write to, but these were not things that were, it was not evenly distributed in terms of the ability to build these applications. And ultimately, I think it brings us all here together today that there's a group of new entrepreneurs that are building this software and are building it in a new way. And they're all building open source companies. And I think that's the premise of this talk at its core, is that we have a new set of companies that are all building together and have these benefits in mind while also focusing on their own goals, their own missions, their own initiatives along the way. So with that, over the summer, we set out on a path to work with as many of these companies as possible and understand their open source initiatives, understand the things that they would like to build for their own particular communities. And over the course of 3 or 4 months, have been lucky to work with some great companies, build great relationships with these co-sponsors of our events, while also building great relationships with developers who are building great things for a lot of these companies. Microsoft, UNICEF, the Ethereum Foundation are the biggest of names, but we have a lot of great projects like Portis, AirSwap, Arweave, Bancor, some of which we'll present to you today on the great projects that they're trying to build in their own open source communities. And I think what's most interesting about these is the composability. So Consensus Labs can put up a bounty or a prize that's interesting to them that also manages to use Dharma, also manages to use Bloom, and ultimately is all using Ethereum in a way that wasn't possible to do in a previous iteration of building companies. So before getting into Ethereal Blocks, which I know is the premise of this section of the talk, I just want to talk about some of the interesting projects that were built in our summer of hackathons. We started at Ethereal New York, where we did the Ethereal Virtual Hackathon. We then did a hackathon called Beyond Blockchain, which is this tree that's coming out of the block in the middle. And then we have a hackathon that we did called Grow Ethereum. And so I'll go through in these next slides a few of the most interesting projects that came out of those, some of which have continued on to do very interesting things with some of the people in the audience today. So I'll start with Enable Credit, which I think is one of the most fascinating projects and has come a long way since they did their Ethereal Virtual Hackathon just 4 months ago. I'm looking at this tweet by Joe Lubin. It was on May 11th, 2019. This landing page, I think they must have put up just the last couple of weeks. The idea behind Enable starts with the picture of that woman on the screen, Ines, who was one of the hackathon members on that team. She was going to Cornell next year. She has $60,000 in loans that she has to pay to work towards her education at Cornell, after which she expects to receive a kind of a competitive salary in the $100,000 range in America. However, given that she's currently a member of, she's an Indonesian citizen, she was looking at interest rates somewhere around 30% for this $60,000 loan, which was something that the team members of Enable looked at and said, there might be something that we can do better using crypto. And that's something that they continue to be testing to this day. This was in response to a Consensus Labs challenge about double opt-in credit systems and richer financial reputation that would allow for lower interest rates and ultimately easier access to the financial system for people around the world. And this is what they tested. They built using Dharma, Bloom, and 3Bucks, which are 3 technologies all built on Ethereum, in order to build this MVP. And right now, they're looking at a lending rate that they're hoping to be 6%, as opposed to the 30% that NS originally was receiving. So this is just ultimately a very exciting project. This team was in Berlin, San Francisco. Ines was in Indonesia, and I believe there's a team member in Singapore. They all work together on it. They continue to work together on it, and it's just kind of like an amazing thing that we see. The last thing I'll note is that they received a grant from the Binance program, which was a great program that allowed them to continue working on what they were doing after the hackathon. And this also shows just the value of being a part of a broader open source community, where you start a project at a hackathon, you tell people about it, and other community members kind of come in to take that project to the next step. And I'm going to be rooting for Enable from here on out. This is Microsoft's, and I'm not going to go into Microsoft's prize, but I'll just point out that they put up 20 over the course of the Ethereal Virtual Hackathon. These are the 12 closed out projects. There's 8 that were kind of in progress, but I think many of them are also solved at this point as well. And it was great to work with York and Microsoft. And as opposed to the Enable approach, which was go deep on one project, Microsoft put up 20 different things that they wanted to see over a 3-week period and got responses back from the community as a result. And it was great to work with them, and I think they'll have a new batch of 20 ready at some point soon. And this is to build a lot of Ethereum connectors on Azure was effectively the goal. And a lot of sample code that other developers now can use is now available as a result of the event. UNICEF participated in our 3rd hackathon, Grow Ethereum. And what they were trying to do was build a platform that reduces the digital divide. So the idea being that there's internet access available only in differing amounts around the world, and that it would be great to have a dashboard where you could see what internet connectivity looked like in different states, different regions within countries, and work together to then incentivize people to basically put money back towards those common goods. So in this example from the hackathon, one of the hackers built this dashboard, and at the top you'll see that you can write in ISPs for different regions that would increase the internet connectivity in that region, and would be paid out for doing so within a smart contract that pays them for basically growing the internet service network. So this is, I think, a good example of how Ethereum is enabling machine-to-machine contracts in a trustless way, where just by adding something to the internet grid and effectively incentivizing that via a smart contract, you can have increased internet connectivity, which is a very important, obviously, thing for the world. So excited to see where this one goes. It was a great idea from the UNICEF team. And then the last one that I'll show was a bounty actually done during, I think, also Grow Ethereum. I think it started during Beyond Blockchain and then continued on into our next hackathon, which is something that we're seeing, is that hackers and companies are interested in long, ongoing relationships with these hackers, and everyone is effectively interested in just growing Ethereum in ways that everyone can kind of think through together. So this was for EIP 1767. It was a GraphQL implementation that needed to get into Pantheon, which is a future release of Ethereum. And it was put up by the Pegasus team, which is Consensus's internal protocol team, and was closed out within a couple of months, working towards effectively this GraphQL interface that can port data to a Pantheon node. So I bring that all up to say that these bounties have kind of run the gamut. They've been at the infrastructure layer, they've been at the entrepreneurship layer, they've been in the social impact realm, and ultimately you'll see even more examples as this presentation goes on, as we talk through what happened during Ethereal Blocks. Before that, just a few numbers on the things that we've seen over the summer. 1,000+ builders, 250 projects, about $150,000 in prizes, 25 sponsors, of which many you saw, and then 2 projects that have gone on to get funding after the hackathon. And with that, I'd like to introduce Ethereal Blocks, which was our latest and greatest hackathon associated with Ethereal Tel Aviv. We had great sponsors across the ecosystem, including Matic, AirSwap, Waves, Bancor, Good Dollar, and Portis, of which we'll have 3 come up today and share some of their winning projects. I think the first thing to note is just the branding. We talked about composability a little bit earlier on the call, or not on the call, in this presentation. And this is the Lego blocks that I think shows what that looks like. You can build on top of Ethereum, you can build on top of Portis, and ideas can grow as things kind of continue. So with that, I'd like to welcome Bancor to the stage to talk a little bit about the Bancor prizes.
Cool, thanks so much. Appreciate the intro, and everyone can hear me, hopefully. Cool, so we were super excited to participate in Ethereal Blocks. We had 2 challenges. One was generally geared towards this idea of this new crypto DeFi primitive, the Decentralized Liquidity Pool. So this is something that Bancor created in mid-2017, and we've seen adopted by folks like Uniswap, the bonding curve communities, kind of overlays with this concept. So the first challenge was really focused on this new primitive, the Decentralized Liquidity Pool, and how to optimize it to reduce impermanent loss, improving analytics on this, and also improving the creation of decentralized liquidity pools. The winner is a developer named Proof of Tom. The project that he built is called Community ETHs. It allows anyone to create a token that's essentially based on what Bancor calls a liquid token, could also be called a bonding curve. And anyone can sort of join the community and based off of the amount of tokens they're holding, gain access to certain perks that the community is offering. So that's called Community ETHs, Proof of Tom, and he was the first winner of a Challenge 1. Challenge 2, so Bancor is a liquidity protocol. It's just a series of smart contracts, and anyone can build a front end on top of Bancor. Bancor.network was sort of the first proof of concept front end, and going forward, we've seen dozens and hopefully in the future hundreds of front ends that will allow anyone to create a token or contribute liquidity or do decentralized token swaps. And this is a conversion widget. Basically, anyone can embed this widget directly on their website or within their app, and this is sort of a window into Bancor's decentralized functionality, swapping tokens. The widget interacts directly with the blockchain, and anyone can send any token in the Bancor network. There's about 160 ERC20 and EOS-based tokens on the network now, and receive any token in return. We're super excited about this. Now any app developer or any website can embed this in just a couple of lines of code, and it interacts directly with the blockchain. Our previous conversion widget utilized our APIs, but we were really excited to have something work directly on the blockchain. And the developer, Steve Noni, it was the one who built this and whipped this up, and we're super excited about it. So this was kind of the first step in Bancor's grant program that we've just launched. We're super excited about it. This is a roadmap that we just announced. The real cool part about this is the initial grants are going to be voted on by the Bancor Foundation Council. We're really looking to expand the sort of pool of developers building on Bancor. But Bancor, the BNT token, which connects everything as the Bancor network token, is soon being airdropped. The Ethereum reserve is being airdropped on BNT holders. BNT itself is turned into an inflationary token, and this is kind of the future of our grants program. The inflation rate is going to be voted on by the community, and the community will also vote on the recipients of the inflation. And so this is sort of this DAO-esque mechanic that is sort of the future of our grants, and it's going to be really voted on by the community, and the BNT inflation, as well as sort of grants directly to the foundation, are going to fund these projects going forward. So we're very excited to sort of expand the pool of developers building on Bancor, and really, really pumped to be a part of the Gitcoin project. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Nate. That was awesome. Really excited about Bancor, and this slide actually is that slide that gets me most pumped. the fact that they're interested in working with these developers after the events, working with them to grow their community, and also at the same time experimenting with tokens and experimenting with the different ways to engage with communities on an ongoing basis. These are the things that I think Gitcoin is excited to see as we think about open source and the future of open source. So thank you, Nate, for presenting. Next, we have Tom from Portis, who will present on the Portis prizes and the winners.
Thanks. Hey, everyone. So first of all, I want to thank Gitcoin for this opportunity. This is the third hackathon, virtual hackathon we've been doing with them in a row, I think. And so far, it's been great. And so I'm from Portis, and for those of you not familiar with us, Portis offers developers an SDK, so they have an embedded wallet inside their dApp, so they don't have to ask the user to install anything or go through any sign-up process. It's all very easy and familiar, but we use end-to-end encryption. So users maintain absolute control over their private keys, which we feel is very important. So our goal was to not build actually on Portis develop our product, but we wanted to see people build exciting things with Portis, especially with the gas station network that we integrated with. So we made a very enticing prize, and we offered the winner a ticket to DevCon in Osaka. And so we saw some interesting submissions, but the thing that caught our attention the most was GDAI. And what GDAI did is, and Vivek mentioned before, the building blocks that everybody is building together, and I think this is a great example of how we're seeing the ecosystem grow and having a lot of projects come together to create something like an holistic approach that gives you a solution which is more than the sum of its parts. So the gas station network, what it does, it allows anybody, but usually the dApp, to sponsor gas fees for their users, because gas fees are a big user experience issue. Besides the fact that they're very unnatural for the average person, you're not used to paying, the AWS fees when you're using an application. There's also kind of like a psychological barrier of why should I do it, and it's also hard. Where do I get the money? Like, now I have to buy $20 worth of ETH just to pay a couple of cents for doing something. So they took together a couple of interesting projects. So the gas station network by Tabuki, and Fulcrum Trade by BZX, which offers compound interest on DAI that you lock up, and Kyber Network offers the liquidity from Ethereum to DAI, or more precisely from DAI to Ethereum. And Portis allows everything to come together because we support the gas station network internally, and it's a very smooth experience for the user. So what happens is that the user can put some DAI into this contract, and from that point on, that DAI accrues interest, and that interest is paid for paying the gas fees. Now, usually the gas problem is something that is not really a problem if you have ETH or DAI for that matter, because you already have money. But it's still nice to have in the sense that users are, when they're using Venmo and they got $5 and they're paying their friend $5, it's not $5.05. So to get around the problem of the gas fees, you got that interest paying that for you. So we can hide it from the user. We can not even show him that he's gaining interest, but just use that money to pay the gas fee, so everything is really smooth. And we really love that. We really like that project because it shows how you can have a lot of different projects coming together and creating something which is truly a great experience. And we're looking forward to seeing them in Osaka in DevCon.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it. Yeah, really excited about that project. It's a great example of people using composability to our advantage in crypto. Last but not least, we have Matic, and Sandeep from Matic will come up to talk about the prizes.
Hi all. So basically a brief intro about Matic. So Matic is a layer 2 scaling platform or built on top of Ethereum. It provides fast transactions, low confirmation times for the dApps to scale. And it's currently one of the most aggressively growing in terms of adoption blockchain platform, and we already have a large number of applications, and that's why a lot of developers ask for these various kind of protocols which are available on Ethereum, like Kyber network and Uniswap and things like that, to be available on the Matic network side chains, which are private or public side chains, right? So basically we had in total we had 5 bounties, and out of that I'm like showing only 3 over here, and out of them I'll be elaborating a bit more on the enabling a set of decentralized protocol on Matic network. So so this bounty was won by the person called Bancor. So he actually deployed all of these protocols onto Matic network. Not only that, he did post in terms of Medium post. He made Medium post about all of these deployments, and now imagine the kind of benefits it gets to the overall community. Like all the developers that were looking for these protocols, they can quickly use it. So we are this is the first time we use Gitcoin, and it was a very good experience for us, and it like offloaded a lot of things from which could have been expected from our team. So it got easily done by here. So yeah, it's like a GIF, and then you can see some of the things that the winner of the bounty did. So all in all, a very positive thing for us, and we keep doing a lot of these Gitcoin bounties in future. Thanks Gitcoin team. Thanks Vivek. Yep.
Awesome. Thanks, Sandeep. Cool. I will bring us home. These were our great sponsors, and we're excited to do more events and ultimately just work with more open source companies to build more things. I just want to take a second for any of the hackers who maybe are not here in Tel Aviv, but are a part of our network. Ultimately, there are many names that I can name. I can rattle off like 10 right now. There's Stefan, there's Crypto Mental, Bacoa, a lot of the names that the different sponsors have already brought up. These are the people that are all around the world working towards Web3's future and are doing it just day over day on Gitcoin. And that's the community of people that you guys, we're excited to share with everybody and to continue to grow as we think about the future of open source. The things that I think these people are looking for the most are things that meet this triangle of work. And this is something that we think about a lot as we think about growing open source communities. The things that we think in Ethereum we have the ability to show to people are things that have an impact, that are building towards a better version of the internet, that align with the values of these developers who are interested in Web3. And the third one, which has traditionally been the hardest to find within open source software, is that we can compensate well. There's a lot of open source companies that are well funded and are able to build things not only internally, but have the budget to build externally. And there's a community of people that can help facilitate higher velocity as you go. So this is a great quote from Jameson Lopp, who's a Bitcoiner, but we're going to accept him at Ethereal Summit today. If you want to build a ship, don't drum up people to collect wood, and don't assign them tasks and work. Rather, teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea. And the Ethereum ecosystem has a variety of different things that we can work towards, and it truly is an endless sea. So we're excited about that. We have another hackathon coming up. It's called the Road to DevCon. It's coming up starting next Monday. If you're interested in sponsoring either this event or a future event, just being an open source company that engages with our open source community, this is something that we want to encourage, and so just find me after. And then the last thing that I will softly unveil is that we're building a product around this called Gitcoin Communities, which is the idea that we want to help grow, build relationships, not only in the hackathon context, but on an ongoing basis so that you can work with developers in an ongoing, recurring way. And we're excited to try this out with a variety of different people in the ecosystem. If that's of interest to you, please do also reach out. Let me know. Thank you.